everybody. John Mattis along with Tracy Ninny. Welcome to the Securing Success Show. This is, for those of you who want to know, this is our first recording in 2025, even though we've already put 3 shows out there. We kind of like on a 3-show gap. Those were actually left over from late in 2024. So this is our first show. So Happy New Year, Tracy.
Happy
and
New
you have
Year.
you have a lot going on. For those of you that don't know, Tracy is based in Southern California and was struggling for a little bit, but we're so happy that you are safe and family safe.
Thank you very much. I had a lot of good friends in LP and supply chain reaching out, trying to get generators into California, which, by the way, you can't.
No.
So,
did you ever get one?
Yeah. Well, the good news is my fiance is now going to be a Generac distributor. He's a contractor. So he had launched his second business for him. He's got 5 lined up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was a really testy, sad, scary time. We lost power for 3 days, so we were really lucky. But the surrounding area it's unfathomable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
The devastation. So I'm happy to be here, and I want to thank everybody who reached out because I did have a lot of support.
That's great. So we're happy to have you back. So, and I'm really excited about this show. We have a big pro that's come onto the show for us today.
Paul is Paul Jones. He's a mentor source like not many others. He has been up and down, East Coast, West Coast. He has started programs. I think he's even closed programs. As everybody has in this industry lately, we've done a lot of flexing. He is a seasoned LP professional, over 21 years for sure. Sunglass Hut, Luxottica, Abram and Straus, Jordan Marsh. I also know him from Mervyn's. And he started the program at eBay. Yeah. They didn't even have an LP program, and he showed them all the gaps and cracks and put a lot of solutions in place for them. Now he is Limited. Oh my gosh. He ran the Limited for all over the place. Built teams there, redesigned the program, had a very interesting experience there. He is a rebounder of all sorts, and he has come up shining and healthy. He is on the board of directors for the LP Foundation. He's a senior consultant. I believe he's vice chair for LPF. And he's currently the director of sales for Gatekeeper. And I just read somewhere that Gatekeeper, I'm going to say merged or bought, I'm not sure, another company. So we're going to want to hear about that too. Please welcome Paul Jones.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, John.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
And you're in Florida, right?
I am. Beautiful state of Florida.
You're never leaving, are you?
He's got the glow. He's got that Florida glow.
We try to keep it year-round, John.
By the way, I really am a fan of your thoughts from the beach.
Thank you.
I do like those. Yeah.
Well,
those are good. How's your dog?
Charlie's doing just fine. He's sitting right here listening. So
I wish my dog would come in with me. John always has his. Mine's a big scaredy cat.
Yeah, mine is off begging for lunch.
Oh, yeah. No, Charlie thinks he's an LP vice president. So.
Well, one of the great things about doing this show, Paul, is that Tracy and I have an opportunity to bring our friends up, and although it makes it easier, luckily we have a lot of high-level friends that are big-time influencers in the industry and have changed the way loss prevention and asset protection are viewed and operate. So we are super happy to have you on the show.
Thanks. It's great to be on the show. And I think it's a great show to be able to give tools to the people that are in the business today looking for some different ideas.
I think everybody's looking for some direction right now. The ground's feeling a little shaky for a lot of people. We've had another company yesterday announce a Quicksilver Billabong, and they own one other. They're closing all 100 stores, brick and mortar in the United States. And people are going to need help transitioning and keeping a good mindset because it's a lot of it, right? I do the career part of the show, and John does the leadership, and mindset and fortitude and believing in yourself. And pulling yourself up even though you feel like you can't is a key part, right, to next steps.
Absolutely.
So you've been through a lot of changes in your career, some great, some challenging. What would you recommend for professionals to handle and bounce back from those setbacks, or having positions dissolved or becoming unemployed?
I think that what I'd suggest to everybody is every day today, for those that have no impact at all, they have functional jobs, they're in high points in their careers. It's very important to begin your networking process while you're employed and while you're seeking employment, and when you get a job. It has to be a continuous process all along. You can't just expect to have a network of people willing to help you if you haven't been there to help them all the time you were gainfully employed. So I've always taken the approach that I want to be a great colleague to all the other retail LP professionals, because we're all in it together. And I've made it really a life's mission to network well, help others that are out of work, help others with leads. Most of my programs were developed that I was able to lead by utilizing colleagues, whether it be from Macy's or Lowe's or Target or Home Depot, asking for their advice and what's working for them. And so the networking process brings a lot of things, but it's incredibly important when you hit a downsizing or a bump in the road where you're out of work, because that's when you can leverage and get some payback from your network, because hopefully you've paid into it for quite a period of time. So I've always found that to be helpful. And the other thing is looking for a job is a job. And too many people, they get that punch in the gut and they get on the couch. And I can tell you, when I received the worst punch in the gut I had, I was on the couch watching the Kardashians for 2 weeks. And I was scared to death that, geez, what am I going to do to rebuild my career? But I was stuck in quicksand. And then I was reminded by a colleague, Gene Smith, who coached me to say, look, you've spent all this time building a network. I want you to go out and look at getting a job the same way as you looked at your career. It's a job. You need to get out of your house every day, and you need to stop being planful. So leave your house, get out there, and start averaging calls with your networks and asking for their time and letting them know where you're at, what you'd like to do, and can they help you, and what advice can they give. And I did that. And it was painful because some of the people I reached out to, I wasn't sure what their reception would be, but I can tell you by and large, all of them were very helpful, gave me great advice. And I didn't just go to the people that were my buds. I went to the people that were judgmental as well. It said, hey, here's the dilemma. I'm looking for work. Here's where I was. Here's what I want to do. How can you help? Or have you been in the same position? And almost to a T, every single one of those executives that I had approached, A, they all helped, but B, they all had been through the same type of learnings. So I felt really quickly that I'm in it with a lot of other people. It's not just me that this happened to. It happens in business. And it happened several times in my career. So you just got to be able to have a plan to respond to it, I think. And that's why every day that you wake up, building your network, taking care of this community is going to pay you dividends in the long run if you do your job up front.
That's amazing advice. Yeah, very, very relative to what's happening today. And, and Paul and I've known you for so long. I mean, I think goes back to the Federated days.
Yeah.
And the one thing that has always been very impressive to me is that not only are you a leader within the organization that you work for, but you're also a leader in the industry. So you sort of balance both of those roles really well. But can you describe, what your leadership style looks like today versus where it was, and how it's evolved over the years?
Yeah, I think really, John, we kind of grew up with the same backgrounds in the Federated days. And before Federated, I had time at Bradley's and that. It was catch 'em, hook 'em, and book 'em, get the biggest case. So it wasn't really a career at that point. It was fun. It was a fun job, probably the funnest job on the earth at that time. 5 steps were a suggestion at that time,
Yeah.
And we really weren't a profession. So I think that, what I've learned over time is that this is a special profession, and what we need to do is we need to invest in learning. We need to, as a community, go out and figure out what our best methods and best practices. And at some point in my career, when we saw the landscape changing, really around when Sarbanes-Oxley came out, and you had HR people getting designations and saying, "Hey, we're an important function that operates in retail. You should embrace us as that." And then we had internal audit saying, "Hey, we're an important function that operates in retail, and we should be embraced." And a group of us got together and said, asset protection and loss prevention is a very important function that supports both internal audit and human resources in the companies. So we really ought to have a leadership position and stand on training and education and certification, because what we do is special. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody should do it. So we founded, a group of us, founded the LP Foundation about 17 years ago. And that was in an effort to get the baseline communication and education on what asset protection is and the training on how you should operate. And we did that by taking the best LP programs in the country at that time, getting their people in a room, and cohesively writing the criteria for the LP certifications that we have today. And that was a team effort as an industry that we all approached together, saying, this is worth it, that asset protection is a function worth investing in. And oh, by the way, they're really, in a lot of cases, the unsung heroes of retailers. And that's only played out over the last 17 years to have a lot of people that have their LP certifications today. We have a lot of energy around the LP Foundation. And I think the LP Foundation in our programs help retailers today. And I think they help also represent loss prevention people from an advocacy standpoint. We spend a good deal of time handling media that's on LinkedIn or out there that's not representative of the facts of what happens in loss prevention today. So you'll see me oftentimes trying to balance what the retailer's position is on some of these public forums, and letting them know that, retailers aren't going to talk to you about what they're doing today, and they're not going to talk to you about what actually happened on something that you're perceiving they were that they were wrong in doing. But as an industry, I can tell you we're very professional, and the retailers today and the loss prevention people today have very difficult jobs, as do the frontline associates, as you all know. It's a very dangerous job today with the level of crime happening in the retail stores. And the asset protection people continue to be the standouts of what stops the craziness from happening in those environments. In over 17 years, I've seen asset protection be the now go-to team. So when COVID happened, who did they come to? It's the asset protection team. When there's riots in the street, who do they go to? It's asset protection team. 9/11 happened, we needed crisis management plans, bird flu, you name it, it became the asset protection teams. None of us had those knowledge points or basis of knowledge at that time, but we had to learn on the fly and develop plans, and we had to be very good at how we did that. So if you look at 18 years ago, when a group of us got together and said, let's found this thing called the LP Foundation, and the industry and where it is today, it's a different industry. And it's an industry today where asset protection people have proven their worth to retailers and businesses. They're often at that table with the CEO and the other C-level executives where they belong. And they're sought out partners in the businesses that work right today. And that took a lot of work from this industry to make that happen. And it happened off a lot of the backs of the people that guys like John, you and I inherited this industry from. People like the King Rogerses of the world and the Jim Lees of the world and the Doug Wicklanders and Dave Zalowskis, all their work set a table for us to then take it and now set a table for another group of people who will then take this profession and bring it to that next level. And so that makes me excited about our industry, the LP Foundation, and calls like this.
Love that. Love it.
very a very comprehensive overview of the history of it. As we evolve as an industry, right, things change and fluctuate, and you had the opportunity to pivot to a new industry in a new role. I'm curious what kind of advice you would give to people listening about how to kind of embrace that, and what are the things that surprised you the most once you've gone on the solution provider side? Like, what's that surprise?
Yeah, I have a couple levels of that answer. One is going from traditional retail to e-commerce, which I think John, with his background, also had probably similar experiences. So going from traditional retail to a solution provider job, it's a very humbling experience because the people that you would call as colleagues and get them on the phone in 3 seconds don't necessarily take your call in 3 seconds when you're not their colleague and peer before. And I understand that. And I try to be very understanding of the precious time that these leaders have because they're busier today than they've ever been. So you've got to really be prepared for that. The second thing is you've got to get out of your own mind. I had in my mind that I wasn't a salesperson. And the guy who straightened me out on that was Dave Zalowski. He wanted to like slap me in the head and say, "What do you mean, Paul? You've been selling your entire career." And I said, "What are you talking about, Dave?" He said, "You've been selling to people that commit crimes that it's in their advantage to tell you why they committed and what they did. And they tell you. You've been telling retailers that don't want to do something how they should do it, and you make compelling arguments and you get them to do it." He goes, "That, my friend, is sales." So I was convinced at an early time that I could take the skills I learned as an asset protection person and move that into the sales piece. But there are some adjustments, and one of those is, you need to be a little bit humbled and approach that. And before I took a solution provider role full time, I talked to people that had done it before me, like Stuart Rosenthal, and said, what were your experiences and how did you get through it? And what should I be prepared for? And at the time, it was very, very good advice for me. So what I'd say to anybody is, if you take the skills that made you successful as an asset protection person, those same skill sets, I believe, can be used for many of the business problems that exist today and in the sales equation as well. To me, today, sales is an investigation. I find the company that needs us. I now have to make a compelling argument like the interview to get them to understand that this may be able to help them. I need to know enough about their industry, their challenges, and our product to be able to connect those two together to have them feel that this is going to help them, because it has to really be their decision because it's their money. So to me, it's a fun piece of taking everything I've learned in asset protection and just applying it differently. But I do think the same things that make you successful as an interviewer, as an entry-level asset protection person, and as a vice president of asset protection, those same skill sets will work in sales and will work in, I believe, in many business formats, just managing business from a common sense and practical standpoint. Because most of the challenges that asset protection people have solved in the last 15 years, we had to figure out. No one had a plan to say, here's what you do with the bird flu, or here's what you do with COVID. We had to start with figuring out what bird flu was, what COVID was, how that, what other plans we've done in the past, how do we apply it to this, and then how do we use those logical thought patterns that we've used in the past to make the programs in the future, and then use what we have for every program that we put in place, whether it's a high target store program or a background check program. You put in your KPIs and you manage to the KPIs, and you look at when you're not making them, the reasons why, and you try to solve for that. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, I think so. That was a good one.
I wanted to take a step back, sort of like stepping stones to your success and things that were game changers. And I'll always remember one of the things that had the most impact to us, and when I say us, I mean like ORC, investigators, the LP world, was when you went to eBay. And it was around the same time that there was a significant amount of e-fencing that was going on using marketplaces to sell stolen merchandise. No one could get cooperation. There was a lot of legislative issues, judicial issues, and things like that. And Paul changed that. He went to eBay, immediately changed that thought process, developed the ProAct program, developed an investigations program to what it is today. And I think that was one of the biggest contributions to at least the investigations in ORC LP world was when you went to eBay and changed that whole narrative.
Thanks for saying that, John. That was a great opportunity for me. I had taken a year out of the business because I had a non-compete agreement. Many people don't know that, but that's why I took the role at RILA, which was a great role for me to learn what all the other retailers are doing and see how trade associations functions. But one of the reasons RILA hired me was to advocate for ORC legislation, and I did quite a bit of that. And then what I learned is that the problem probably not going to get solved through congressional action back then. While I still support congressional action today, back then in those days, I felt the best problem would be as if eBay would change. And as I would advocate on Capitol Hill, I would meet with those eBay people. And one day they said, well, why don't you come to work for us if it's that simple? And I said, well, if I thought you were serious about stolen goods, I would, but I don't think you're serious about getting them off your site. And then about a week or two after that conversation that happened at the Capitol building, the VP of eBay's legal department called me and said, would you meet me for a lunch in DC? I'd like to talk to you. And so I met him, and we were just blunt with each other. eBay truly believed there were no stolen goods on their site. And I can tell you that today. I know these people very well. They had convinced themselves this was an anti-competitive issue. So they dug in and got tons of lawyers to fight retailers. And eBay is very effective, as many online companies are, with the powerhouse legal teams that they hire. Once I was able to convince eBay that there were stolen goods on their site, which we did very quickly when I went to work there. Once I had their agreements that they would indeed get rid of those stolen goods if they knew about it. When we went to work and proved it to them, it changed the game. They allowed us to work with retailers. We rewrote their privacy documents to allow us to share information when we thought crimes were being committed. And that was a game changer to help these retailers out there that had real issues. So we're real pleased with that. And I can tell you from all the companies I've worked with today, 95% of the people that I worked with at eBay were great people that wanted you to succeed. It was by far one of the best cultures, and that was part of the success of the program. Is once we were able to educate people on what was happening, the culture with eBay embraced us. And that role led on to, we advanced the asset protection function, not just to help retailers, but actually went on to handle any crimes across the country across the world on PayPal and eBay platform, because many of the terrorist financing issues, ITAR issues where they're selling goods that governments don't want you to sell, they happen online. They're paid for on a payment mechanism like PayPal so that they can be hidden. And we quickly learned that not only was stolen goods an issue on eBay, but we had other crimes, be it counterfeiting, child trafficking, and things like that. And we put procedures, policies, reporting, and people in place to address that across the globe. And I'm very proud of that body of work, but most proud that it still exists today with Christian Hardman running that and the good people at eBay still doing what I believe to be the right thing.
People underestimate the level of complexity in managing a two-sided marketplace.
Absolutely.
And the level of collusion is off the charts. So, but
right.
From my perspective, Paul, thank you for what you gave back with that move.
Absolutely. You're welcome. And I thank the people at eBay for allowing it to happen, and the people that did the work that are still there at eBay today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad you went through the whole program and the process that you had, because I wasn't even aware of some of that. And I know a lot of people aren't. And that's going to be enlightening, because I don't think people ever think, I don't think anyone in our industry that's younger thinks that eBay never had a program, because that's just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did it, which is so cool.
I was the guy lucky enough to do it. Someone was going to do it. I got lucky enough to be the one. So I've made my career out of going into broken things and trying to fix them. So I look at it as there's nowhere to go but up. That really gets my energy going.
Okay, I like that. I got nothing to lose. Why not, right?
Yeah.
We talked about networking, and you talked about RILA and how trade shows work. Our trade shows are really good, and I'm going to say like regional meetings, like IAIs. Yeah, I always do that backwards. All the regional meetings, the investigator groups. I don't know if there's shoplifting groups. I don't think so, but there's an organization for that. Do you find that there's value in attending these meetings and going to trade shows? And how would you suggest people make the most of it? Like, I'd say you have to have a plan when you go to a trade show.
Yes. And I write, there's a thoughts from the beach on this one, but so there's two issues you brought up. One is I'm going to give you a blanket issue that's Paul's point of view on the status of meetings for the LP people. I think we have too many out there, and there are too many people that are driving for meetings to make profit as opposed to making the industry better. So I try to spend my time at any meeting that's going to make that industry better, which would include the Wicklinder-Zalowski meetings, which would include the LP Research Council, which would include NRF and would include RILA, because I think that then it would include the Merchants Risk Council and things that I think are trying to make industries better and not just a for-profit. What you have happening, though, is a lot of these solution providers are now calling all their own meetings. So you have these key trade events, and then you have solution provider meetings, then you have ORC meetings, then you have IACCI meetings. So it can be a little bit too much. So I think it's important that people should realize at the beginning of time in their careers that time is going to be the most valuable asset they have. And if you're going to attend a meeting, don't attend it unless you're going to plan for that meeting. And when I say plan, who do you want to talk to? What do you want to get out of the meeting? Bring your business cards with you. Have 2 or 3 questions that you want answered by the end of the meeting. And if you're running a big LP program where you're hiring people and stuff, I would bring my human resource and recruiting team to every NRF and every RILA conference I had. And I would recruit people at those conferences, and I would make sure that my HR team that were recruiting when we weren't at the conferences started to learn about the industry a little bit. So when they were on the phone trying to recruit top talent, that they had a little knowledge about the industry. So I thought that was, a very important piece. But today, even as a solution provider, I don't go to a trade show that I don't have 4 or 5 absolute to-dos that I have to do. I make sure I'm there early. I always make sure I have the business cards, and I'm making sure I'm making appointments early in the morning or late at night for those people that I know are going to be challenged for the time. So I think that you're cheating yourself if you don't put a plan together for when you spend your time on any meeting.
That was, and I remember that that blog that you did on preparing for these conferences. And I think the one thing that I got out of that the most was, you may think you know lots of people. That's not networking.
Yeah.
How many people know you?
Right.
That's real networking. And I thought that was a brilliant statement, along with making sure that you're prepared. Because I think what happens, in fact, I know what happens when I see some of the younger folks that are at these conferences, they're not prepared. They don't know who they want to meet. And this applies to both the solution providers as well as the retailers, is you want to meet your peers. You want to meet solution providers that have what you need, but they don't know who you are.
Right. Absolutely. If you're serious about your career, I would say add one more step that I don't often say, but every conference I go to nowadays, I try to meet 3 people that I've never met before or people that I have a negative opinion of. And I try to go and meet them, because oftentimes you find out you form a negative opinion off of some moment in time, and it gets stuck in my little mind. But I want to keep keep that going. I'm a continuous learner. So I want to make sure that I'm out of my comfort zone at every conference to try to at least meet 3 people. And 3 sounds like a little amount, but to actually do it at every conference, it's been meaningful for me. It's changed the game a little bit.
I like that. Constant improvement, constant and never-ending improvement. I love that. So, hey, listen,
learning. Yeah, open-minded and learning.
It's perfect. Hey, I got this question. This is going to switch gears a little bit, Paul, because I've known you for so long. Now is an opportunity to ask you some questions that I never got a chance to ask you. Can you tell me how you became so fascinated with pro wrestling? And I mean, not only like was he a fan, but it's like he was behind the scenes. He knew the wrestlers.
I'm so glad you asked this question.
I've been dying to ask this question. In fact, that was the number one reason I wanted you on the show.
A lot of people have asked that question, and I don't usually answer it, but I will answer it today.
Woo!
Who asked it before or answering it today is cool. As a young kid, I was little. That might surprise you. I was short, and I had a big mouth. And my dad said, you know what? We lived in the ghetto. We lived in Charlestown, is the city I grew up in Boston, which at one point was 1 square mile, the murder capital of the United States. It was a foothold of the Irish mob. It's depicted in the movie The Town from Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. And actually, the depiction they do in that movie is a real cleaned up, nice version of the town I grew up in. I saw my first murder at 14 years old, walking outside my house, saw a man executed, and it wasn't the only murder that I've seen in my time growing up there. The benefit that gave me is great learnings. How I got into the pro wrestling piece is my father decided for me to exist in that town, he needed to get me off the streets. So he put me in this thing for whatever reason called judo. And he had no knowledge of what that was. But through a period of years, I went to judo several nights a week, later became very competitive in judo. In our judo club, pro wrestlers would work out there. And I would get to see them doing the moves. And the moves were the same as judo moves, because first principle you learn in judo is how to fall. And what's very important for professional wrestlers is how to take a fall. Because those falls are real that professional wrestlers are taking. And through time, becoming a fan of pro wrestling and seeing the pro wrestlers, I got to meet a few of the pro wrestlers. I became friends with the legendary wrestler who's called the American Dream, or was called the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, who was my hero in life. He was the son of a plumber. That was his thing, that he's a son of a plumber, and he wasn't the prettiest guy or the biggest weightlifter, but he was going to be the American Dream. And he, poor kid that came from Austin, Texas, and he made good. Well, I was a poor kid that came from the ghettos of Boston, and I was on my career to be the national judo champion, and I wanted it more than anything. And I was going to be the American Dream because my dad was an electrician. So I bought into this guy. I wanted to meet this guy who was larger than life to me. I went on that year and won my first national championship at 10 years old in Denver, Colorado. And I met Dusty Rhodes like 2 years later. And I told him that story, and that really impressed him, and he really liked it. And we became friends. And through the years, that close association, I got to meet many more of my heroes and friends, and then learn the insides of the business. That manifested in itself that I later hired Dusty's son, Cody Rhodes, to be an organized crime guy. And Cody Rhodes today is a multi-gazillionaire, the number one attraction for WWE entertainment today. He's the main event. And a very, very good person, besides being a great professional wrestler. He was challenged as an organized crime person. It wasn't his passion in life, so he went to professional wrestling afterwards. But through that time, I got to know these folks and enjoyed that profession. I later opened up as a hobby, a pro wrestling league here in Florida that I ran for a couple of years. And then today I still go to conventions and still maintain a lot of the relationships with those pro wrestlers. I don't watch the product as much anymore, but that's how I get into that, John.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I like that. So good.
I'm glad you asked that. Well, I think we're at our mark. Thank you so much for your insights and your knowledge. I've learned a lot. I've known you a long time, Paul. I consider you a dear friend. I learned things I didn't know. So thanks for being open and sharing. It's very valuable to everybody.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. And if I can say anything to any person in this business or anyone that I talk to, including my own children, is this business has allowed me to achieve my dreams. It's my dream was just to be able to pay off a house someday. And I was able to do that and provide a living for my family. And I was able to do that. And it's continued to do that through the ups and downs. And it's also given me a whole community of people that have cared about me through the last 40 years. So I think that we're only as good as the people around us. And we have a lot of people in this industry around us. So if you embrace them and you're sincere in your relationships, this industry will give back to you. So I just would encourage anyone that's listening to embrace that.
I agree. And I'd like to add, if you have someone that is calling you that is out of work or has become a solution provider, call them back.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't have a minute, say, I can't talk right now, but I want to let you know I hear you and I care. Just call them back. Right, John?
Right. And check in every once in a while, besides the first time, just check in. It's important because it's lonely when you're out of work. It really is.
And you feel like you're the only one and you're
Absolutely.
not. Yeah.
Right. So hopefully this helps some people. I've been there a couple times.
Well, I hope 2025 becomes a year of growth and adventures and surprises for people, because you never know what that next open door is going to be, guys. Have the faith, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe our industry is going to continue to expand, and great things will happen for asset protection people, because I believe we make a huge difference in the retailers today, and they need us more today. And I speak to both the online and offline and the basic brick and mortar retailers as well. They all need us more today than they did 10 years ago. So if you look at it from that perspective, there's nowhere to go but up. There's nothing but good news and more to conquer.
There is definitely some fascinating evolution that's happening in retail, and it's going to get even bigger. But I think the level of sophistication and the ability to use data to make the right decisions, I think, is just continues to be untapped resource, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be. I'm glad that we are all a part of it. So
absolutely.
But hey, you are an amazing guest, great friend, real mentor to the industry. I could tell you that I get a lot of feedback on a lot of the stuff that you do and a lot of the stuff that some of the guests that are on the show do. So thank you for being able to share your experiences with everybody and give them some advice on where to go to next.
Well, I want to thank you guys, both John and Tracy. You both have helped me in my career for many years. So thank you both. I can remember when we were doing fundraising for NCMEC and people thought we were crazy to do it. John was the first guy I called to help. And we raised over $1 million for them over the years that we did it, which was a great thing. It was a great thing to be part of. So
that was the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Yeah.
Remember when you had John Walsh, you had that whole loop in the NRF and stuff? That was awesome. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. And John was a big piece of that. So thank you all. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, that's a wrap on today's show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. So tune in next time for the Securing Success Show. Take care, everybody. Bye, Paul.
Bye.